Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my book review on The Divines by Ellie Eaton, and I gave this book a 2 out of 5. Before I go into my full review, I'd like to do my new segment, Booktubers Shoutout. I think this community has been great, full of support, lots of recommendations for books, and I believe there's room to celebrate all of us. So today my Booktuber Shoutout is the book Jordy, who I'll link his channel down below. He just recently started his booktube, and he's done a few reviews. His genre is mostly thrillers, and to be honest, it's not really my genre, not because I don't enjoy it, but because I find that it's hard for me to figure out the plot, and I always get surprised, and I'm always like, what? I didn't see that coming, which is a good and bad thing, I guess, but I'm just not into that all the time. However, he does a lot of review for those books. So if you like thrillers, I definitely recommend his booktube. Again, I will link his channel down below. And as always, I would appreciate if you're watching this video, if you can hit the subscribe button, if you can give this video a thumbs up, and also if you have a comment, if you read this book, The Divines by Ellie Eaton, I would love to hear what you thought. If you have any recommendations for books for me to read, or recommendations for my channel or my review, I will always appreciate it. A bit about the author Ellie Eaton. She is a freelance writer, and this is actually her first debut novel, which is super exciting, so congrats, Ellie. She is raised in England, but she has spent the last decade of her life in America. And one thing I really enjoy about this book is that she also went to a boarding school in England, so did her sister. So it's pretty neat because there are obviously some sprinkles of truth from her experience in this book, and actually there's one big plot point in this book that actually is an exact experience that her sister had at boarding school. So I thought that was really neat to learn about Eaton and also about the story as well. Now to share the year this book was published and also the genre, because I find that knowing when the book is published is really important, because I find that books that are recent release have a lot of hype and get really high reviews. But if you read a book that's been out for a few years, and given the context of when it was given, your reviews may change. And I think if an older book still has high reviews, then it really stands the test of time. So this book is very new. It's, again to mention, Ellie's debut novel, and it was published last year in 2021. And the genre, I would say, is young adult. It's also maybe coming of age, if you consider that a genre. And I will also consider a mystery because the story starts with a possible death. Now a bit about the story. So this is set in a boarding school in England, and the main character, her name is Josephine, and there's a reason why she has 3 different names that you would have to read the book to find out. She goes to an all-girls boarding school, and it's really a coming of age. And the story starts, as I said earlier, there is someone who is really injured, and she seems like she's dead. And then we kind of go between 2 timelines for the main character, Jo, where she starts talking about the 2 or 3 weeks leading up to the event of this fellow student who is appearing dead. And then we also flash forward to present time when Jo is now a newborn mother and married, and she kind of goes between her present and having a lot of struggle between letting go of the past. And it's just really interesting because the way you uncover the story is kind of like a mystery to me. In this novel, as it's set in a boarding school, we see a lot of classicism or elitism. So the students who attend this boarding school, they call themselves the Divines, and they talk a certain way. They think they're hot shit. People of the town really have a lot of grudge against them because they're just here to live here, and this town isn't doing that well. So there's a lot of you can see contrast between what it's like to be a boarding school student and to also be someone that lives in the town. And a lot of the students in this book, one of the reasons why I gave this book a 2 was the characters were all pretty not likable. And I think that was the point, because it is coming of age and they're still trying to figure out who they are, and they do come from a huge place of privilege, which the story does touch on several times. The characters. So the first main character that I kind of mentioned already is Josephine, and the reason why she has Jo as a name, I can give the spoiler, is that all the Divines, which is what the girls call themselves at the school, they give themselves male names of their name, which is kind of like a snobby thing, I guess. So she's the main character, and she it's told from her point of view, so we see that she struggles, she hesitates a lot, she's very not sure about herself, and she's in her 5th year at the boarding school, and she's going through a tough time because the group that she's usually part of, which is Skipper and the twins, they're kind of pushing off to the side, And also this year, at the beginning of the school year, Josephine, our main character, is paired with Jerry Lake, who is kind of like the loser of the school. And Jerry Lake is actually the student that we find right at the beginning who has fallen and seems to be dead. So as you can see, there's a lot of like, ooh, like how are these people all involved with each other? And everyone like Skipper and the twins and even the main character Josephine really treat Jerry badly. And not only do they treat her badly, but they know they're treating her badly and they do it on purpose. And like it's really awful in the book because they just really push Jerry to the edge. So yeah, it's interesting and to see these characters, and I think that's why I gave it 2, because I just didn't like them at all, and even at the end of the book there was no redemption. Common themes I found in this book, number 1 for sure is bullying. I fortunately never really endured bullying in elementary or high school, but I see it in movies, I hear it from friends who went to maybe not so great high schools, and it's just awful. And this book really like captures how awful girls, especially teenage girls, can be to each other and how they can be so cruel. So that was the one thing that I definitely noticed, and I felt like if I ever knew a teen girl that was going through a hard time, I would share this book with them to read, because it is a young adult's book and it just shows like how awful bullying can be and the ripple effect. A second common theme I noticed is, as I mentioned earlier, this novel is a dual timeline between present day Josephine and past day Josephine in boarding school. And so this book talks a lot about her perception of oneself, because how she perceived herself in boarding school and how she perceived herself as an adult, and later on when more things are revealed to her, it's very different and jarring. And it comes back to, I've mentioned in other reviews, when I think about myself in high school, I thought of myself a certain way, and it wasn't until later, like 10-year reunion or like later with friends, that they're like, no, in high school you were this and that, and I was like, what? Like I saw myself as a big dork. So it's interesting that this book talks about that, as it is a coming of age novel. Things I did not enjoy about this book, the first one was the writing. I thought was actually kind of rough to read. This is Ellie Eaton's first novel. And then she's usually a freelance writer, so maybe her next novel will be a bit better. But the flow was a bit like choppy for me. The second thing I didn't like was how the teachers and the adults at the school had so little power over the students, and it really made no sense to me and very unbelievable. But having said that, as we always know, it was told from a student's perspective, so she is an unreliable narrator. So maybe from her point of view, they were really the bosses of the school. But for me, when I was reading the book, I was like, these students are jerks. They were being so mean to these teachers, and these teachers aren't doing anything. And it made zero sense to me. So that was really hard for me to get through it as well. The last thing I didn't like, and this is why I gave the book a 2, but having said that, I think if you like CW shows on American TV, you may enjoy this book. It had a lot of like romantic, cheesy tropes and relationships that I can see why they happen, but I felt like they put it there because it's like, oh, check, check, check. This just makes the perfect young adults come of age novel. So for me, it was super cheesy, but I'm usually not a fan of CW shows, so this tracks with why I didn't like this book. But if you do like CW shows, I feel like this is the book for you. But of course, there were things I did enjoy about the book. So number 1 was I did enjoy how it captured bullying and the ripple effects of it. I also like how that it really shows that these young women can be so horrific, even though they're young, and it really shows that you can't not take someone seriously when they're young, because they do have the power to hurt people. They do have the power to also treat people with kindness. So I think this book is probably a really great read for girls in high school, especially maybe in a school where bullying is rampant. Now it is time for the Goodreads rating. So on Goodreads, this book got on average a 3.18 out of 5, which I think is very apt. So reasons why people did not like this book was people found it hard to read. They found it hard to follow the protagonist's motivations and why she acted the way she did when she was in boarding school. And then also when they reveal later on how she was perceived in reality by her classmates, it didn't seem aligned with how she perceived herself, which makes sense, but also people found it very jarring and unbelievable, which I can agree with. There were some 5s on Goodreads, so reasons why people enjoyed this book was that it's a coming-of-age novel. Maybe people who also had a bad experience in high school with bullying or went to a boarding school felt the book was really great at capturing that experience. So I can see why this book is great for some people. Now I'll share how the book The Divines by Ellie Eaton made me feel. So as always, I like to share how it made me feel, because in a week, in a month, in a year, if you ask me how a book made me feel, I probably won't remember, what the book was about. I probably won't remember, but I'll always remember how it made me feel. So this book, it made me feel very curious to learn more about boarding schools. When I was a child, when I was finishing elementary school, my dad actually asked if I wanted to go to boarding school in the UK. I live in Canada, but at the time I refused because I had all my friends in Canada, and I was like, I don't want to go to a different school away from my family and my friends. It made no sense to me. So I'm curious to see what would have happened if I had gone to boarding school, but that ship has sailed, obviously. So this book made me feel curious to learn more about the realities of boarding schools. That is my review. Thank you for staying till the end. For The Divines, Ellie Eaton. Again, if you enjoyed my content, I would appreciate if you hit the subscribe button, give a like, and leave a comment. And if you want to join me for my next book, which I actually introduced last video, is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. And the reason why I didn't read this book next was because The Divines, as you can see, is a library book and I had to return it. Whereas Lord of the Flies is my personal copy that I got from my partner's parents' basement. So I'm actually traveling for a few weeks, so I will read this book and I will come back and post my review on it. All right, bye guys.